Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterland universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Praetoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another fantastic guest. I'm joined today by a surprise guest of co-hosts. We got Dave McCoy, Fat Jimmy, returning to the saddle for Return of the Three Amigos here. So yippee fellas, appreciate you guys hopping on to help run this episode with me. And very proud to welcome back to the show Yabapmatt. Before we get started, just a very heartfelt thank you for all that you do and putting up with the bullshit that gets flung your way. And we were talking a little bit off air, and it sounds like you're hanging in there. So yeah, on behalf of everybody, we appreciate you, putting up with this crazy bunch of Praetorians, and B, taking the time to hop on and talk shop with us today. So thank you, man, and welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoy the opportunity to talk about this stuff, especially in a welcoming environment. And I appreciate you guys, having my back and providing feedback constructively, which is a somewhat rare thing in this type of space. So appreciate you guys.
Cool. Jimmy, yeah. I know you had a couple of questions. You want to get us going here?
Yeah, first of all, I definitely want to say also thank you very much for everything you've done over the past 6 years, for what you're doing now, for jumping into the position and grabbing the steering wheel and basically just taking over what some might say is an almost impossible situation. Just like jumping in and taking charge. There are very few people, I think, who would have the courage to do that, and to see you doing that is incredibly commendable, respectable, and I know a lot of people are very appreciative of that.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't know back last year, September or so, when all this kind of happened. I didn't know which way to go. I mean, it was sort of an opportunity to just say, all right, taking my leave, or jump in and deal with crap for an undefined period of time. So it definitely wasn't a sure thing. Some days I don't know if I made the right choice, I don't know. But I'm here. That's what we're doing, and we're gonna see this thing through.
Nice. Yeah, so I guess I wanted to ask, out of the gates, how do you see Splinterlands, both now, both in the short-term future and 10 years down the road? It's a very open question. In the past, we've had this mission statement of peace, prosperity, freedom, goals of introducing people to blockchain through gaming, bringing them into this new world that's emerging, the ability to change lives through earning through gaming, the spawn point equality, all that stuff. Is that still the goal, part of the vision, or just part of the vision? Very open question based on those parameters.
Well, that's still the long-term vision, right? I mean, none of that's changed. And it's personally for me, crypto and just decentralization in general has been really eye-opening and kind of amazing. And so, it's hard to get into that for a lot of people, especially like not tech people. And so gaming is a great entryway into this whole world. And it works. I think it's great for gaming itself. So it's not only like kind of the future of gaming, I think, at some point. But it's also like, once you get into this, people start checking out more things. They start understanding, taking the time to understand, okay, like what's going on behind the scenes, like what is different about this, learning about decentralized communities, learning about the issues of centralized governments and corporations, and what's possible now because of blockchain and crypto. So it's just like, for me, Bitcoin was that, right? I was into Bitcoin. I was learning about it as a cool tech thing for a while, and it sort of opened my eyes to all this stuff. It took years for that to happen. So gaming is a way that, I think can work for that for a lot of other people, and, more fun doing it along the way. So that's 100% still the long-term vision. The short-term plan is really at this point just to make sure we are around and in a good position to go back to building that long-term vision. I do feel like we kind of really got off course in 2022 or so, which is unfortunate. And so now we're sort of not able to focus on that vision very as much as just making sure we have the funds and making sure we have the people and making sure we have what we need to and get the current game to a position where it's like sustainable and we can kind of go back to that longer term focus.
Yeah, gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. For me, it's also seeing a lot of changes that hit the community, both, sometimes negatively, just by the way people see things or feel about changes or stuff. It's almost getting to a point for me where I'm starting to care less about all of the little details and kind of grasping what you just said. Like, at this point, I kind of don't care how it's done, just whatever it takes that we roll forward, and then we hit that tipping point where the dominoes really start falling.
That's what I've sort of been trying to say. Maybe I don't know if I do it so well on the town halls and things. I'm like, everyone's coming to me with all these little nitpicky things like leaderboards and soulbound reward cards and this and that, and I'm like, right now we got to make sure like that everything is just in a good place. It's hard for me to even articulate, but like we just can't get bogged down on all that little stuff, right? For years, a lot of times we get bogged down on all these little things, and like ultimately, if we don't get a whole lot of new people into this ecosystem, it's not going to matter. Like we can do anything we want with all those little pieces of the game, and it's not going to matter if every single new player that comes in never even gets to play a battle, right? This is just not going to matter at all. So, and we're still in a position like we have so much stuff that's like outstanding that we need to be done before we can even still get all of our developers or even most of our developers onto that stuff. So my goal is really like get the stuff that we need to do done in like the quickest and simplest way possible, and don't worry if it's not all 100% perfect or whatever, because we need to focus on the core thing of growing the audience, right? Growing the player base. And then that will, like, we just need to get that cushion where the business is in a good place, right? We're funded, we're good. And then we can start to get into those little details.
Matt, so we started 2024 with, a pretty hot town hall. I went back and kind of re-listened to bits and pieces over the last couple of days as I was kind of preparing for this episode, and the sole focus, and it's continued to be kind of the common thread throughout the last few months of town halls, and we see it in the weekly development updates from guys like Royal Eagle and Investigator and all that sort of stuff is the new player experience, but it's a really ambiguous term. So working towards that vision of new player acquisition and increasing that rate of stickiness and keeping these folks around and trying to get them embedded into the community. It's a really nebulous term, and it's kind of all encompassing. And some folks, feel very strongly that these nitpicky items all fall under that umbrella of new player experience, right? Which is why I feel that they feel it's appropriate to be so vocal and borderline aggressive in delivering these messages to guys like you and some of the other folks on the team. So I'd love to kind of hear your vision for what is new player experience. I know I'm asking you to kind of boil the ocean with that one, but and it's a huge question, but I'm sure in your mind and in team meetings, you guys have kind of a very high level list of bullet point items of what really defines the new player experience and the new player experience. So I'd love to kind of hear you articulate what does that mean to you and to the team, and how are you guys kind of progressing through that list according to the plan of 2024 really ticking the box for that updated player experience?
Yeah, and it's evolved over time. So like earlier on, we were starting with all these things like, oh, it's super difficult to play in bronze, right? And all these things and the reward system and all this stuff. And we spent a lot of time working on that, and there's still work to be done. But more recently, it's been clear that pretty much all the new players aren't even getting to that point. So I think that's kind of what I mean. Maybe nitpicky is the wrong word, but like stuff that's further down the funnel, right? We've been focusing on that a lot. Like once you get into ranked play and all these things, and we still haven't focused on the actual onboarding experience. Behind the scenes, we've been working on the mobile app, like just like updating the website to what we're calling the tech modernization, but just like updating the website so it just works. The same website works on mobile, so we don't have to have a separate mobile app that is always behind on everything. So that's been an ongoing project that is making good progress, but it's big. But besides that, I guess the focus more recently, I'm trying to shift it to onboarding, right? We got to start at the top of the funnel. We got to start with like what happens when players first come in, because they're not even getting to Bronze League. They're not even playing any battles. So we could do all this stuff, all day to make Bronze League awesome. But if none of the people signing up are getting there, it's a waste. So that's, earlier in the year, we were focusing on those type of things from the assumption that like, players were coming in and they were getting into ranked and they were having a bad experience to, we've kind of started, part of what we were doing is starting to collect more data. And that right now has clearly showed they're not even getting to that point. So we're kind of shifting gears more recently to like literally what happens when they first go to the website. Where do they fall off? Why don't they play a battle? How can we get them into playing a battle? How can we get that experience streamlined? And then, we're starting to look at things like, don't push the spell book so early. How can we let people participate in the game, maybe even earn rewards? Now that we have soulbound rewards, right, we can let people earn them without even buying a spell book. Because it's not something that they can sell, like to extract value from the game. So that's why, part of the reason also why I think the soulbound assets was the way to go for rewards. So we're all these things are encompassed under what the new player experience is, right? But I guess the focus is now shifting more towards like literally the direct onboarding experience for new players. And not as much later on down the funnel. So once I want to get to a situation where we have a bunch of people coming into the game, which we do, and they're playing battles and they're getting to bronze, right? And even if they're having a bad experience there and leaving, that's still a huge step up from where we are now. And then we can focus on that. I just feel like we were a little out of order, right? You got to start with step 1 before you do step 5.
Something that almost seems a good place to ask about, like a free-to-play mode. I know you've mentioned in town halls that's not something you think is really, I don't know if appropriate, because you buy cards to play or whatever the reason, but do you feel like giving new players a chance to experience, for free without earning rewards, it's not like they'd be earning SPS or anything, but getting a chance to really just dive in and play the game at any level they want, even all the way up to champ for free, would be a good way to help bring people into that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree at this point, and I will change my mind on things. I feel like the community often doesn't like that sometimes, but I feel like that's what we need. We can't have, like, I'm gonna be wrong. Everyone's gonna be wrong about things, right? And I think the real problem generally always comes from people who, when it's kind of clear they're wrong about something, just like stick to it because they don't want to be seen as flip-flopping or whatever. Like, I have no ego involved in this. I just want the thing to be successful. So if I'm like, hey, we were wrong about something, I'm going to switch gears. And that does cause, in certain cases, people to get upset or annoyed if they liked, whatever thing, or they're used to the thing. So, yeah, I agree at this point. I know in the past I've talked about, not having free to play, but I don't think that was correct, and I agree with you that and I think the soulbound cards really, like, we didn't have the features in the game that worked, like the whole glint thing. The glint that you can earn and then get soulbound things is a way for you can have a free to play experience with what we already have in the game, and you won't earn anything that you can sell, so there's no issue with like bot farms or any of that stuff. We've also dealt with bot farms in Wild and also in Modern. So what the product is in a different state now that I think allows us to do those things. So that's the onboarding experience that we're shifting focus to now, is that, like, people should be able to come in and they should experience this whole game. They should be able to buy packs, combine cards, earn rewards, get soulbound reward cards and all these things. And never even need a spell book, and the spell book would really just unlock things like SPS earnings and stuff like that. So it'd be a normal free to play game experience, and then we have a lot longer in this experience to kind of show them, like, hey, here's why you want to buy a spell book, right? It's not like just up front, like, hey, you try a few battles, okay, buy a spell book or leave. It's more just like, play this fun game, and all along the way, it's more like, hey, do you could be getting SPS? You could have a cryptocurrency wallet. All these different like added benefits. So it's sort of like a battle pass, like, or something in a way. It's like, buy this thing, and unlock all this new stuff is, I think, the best way to go. Which I think it sounds like what you were saying.
Yeah, similar to that. I'm not even going so much as to even reward or earning anything. That could be a cool way to integrate. Hey, you would have earned this. You get to play. You try this battle. You just won. You would have earned this much SPS and this much glint. But giving just people the opportunity to see what the game is like, because that got me hooked. I mean, I think it's almost fair to say everyone that's still here right now in the game, however many thousands there are still playing, are pretty much diehards at this point. We've been through thick and thin. We're here because we love the game. I mean, that's why I'm here. I love the vision got me hooked afterwards. Like, holy crap, you're bringing, all this opportunity to people in third world countries and places where it's literally can be life-changing stuff. But it was the game itself that got me hooked, and the potential of what this game is and how it could be marketed as like a digital Magic the Gathering, or something along those lines, to bring those millions of people in to check it out. But it's the gameplay that I'm still hooked on, that every day when I take a lunch break, I work at home, I go upstairs to have a sandwich or something, I bring my computer up and I blast out a couple of matches. I can't not. I'm addicted to it. And I'm almost thinking any way that we can show people what this is like, when they first come in, and give them a flavor of what this is like, before they buy anything. And will lure them in to make them say, oh, wow, I could buy this. I could own this. Just showing them and then introducing all of those things.
So that's exactly what we're trying to do, right? We don't want to, there's no paywall. Like, we want to get rid of the whole, you need to buy a spell book thing. It's more, come in and play the game, and we are working on fixing our tutorial to just to just get people in and get people playing quickly and experience it, and revamping the starter card, and how that works, to allow people to experience more than just like a tiny subset of level 1 cards. So right. That's all encompassing. Like, that's our focus now, and we're still designing it, like how exactly that's going to work, what we're going to do.
Does that have to be intertwined in existing ranked, or can that just be its own little thing where they play some bots off to the side and just to see
I mean,
what play is like?
I was thinking that'd be basically what Novice League is, right? So you come in right now, you play against bots in Novice League, but we want to make that basically like Novice League is the whole like onboarding experience. So I don't want to call it a tutorial, but like it just teaches you how to play, you know, in sort of like scripted battles. And I'd like to have it sort of be where, you know, you have a larger set of starter cards that you have access to, and maybe it's, you know, only for 30 days or, you know, or time limited. So we're not just giving everyone a whole bunch more cards, but it's like as you go through that thing, you're also like unlocking new starters. So maybe like the first battle, you have like a very small subset of cards, right? You finish that battle experience with very basic. And then after that, it's like, cool, you unlocked these 10 new starter cards, right? So it's the same thing that new players just get, but instead of just being like, here's everything, go figure it out, it's more of a normal like taking you through step-by-step experience of the game and the features. And then it's just like when you're done with that, it's sort of like, okay, now enter into ranked at bronze. And then the next thing that we're working on is we want to add like help tips and recommendations throughout the game. So, you know, I mean, you know, not for the existing players, obviously, that know these things, but even once they get through that tutorial thing, you know, and they're in bronze, if they put a ranged monster in the first position, you know, just have something that it like pops up and just says, hey, by the way, you know, this
that doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, if it's not a close range battle, things like that, maybe showing like, you know, when they're on the team selection and they're picking the first card, highlight some that just say like recommended. A lot of games do that, right? So they know, like, and we just, you know, we can classify the cards as like tanked and, you know, whatever back position, you know, so just general like recommendations that we can show in the site, just so like, you know, right now it's throw people in, you know, sink or swim type of thing and make a purchase, to just more typical game, you know, onboarding mechanics.
So you mentioned the scripted battles alongside, you know, introducing a revamp to the starter card approach, which I think is fascinating. So are you guys thinking like intertwining that with a bit of the story mode, and you know, maybe you start with a subset of starter cards in the life element, for example, and we're focused on, you know, a very defensive minded approach first, teaching about shield and void armor and these sorts of things, and then you progress to perhaps another element, and as you're kind of progressing through that stuff, offering opportunity to play with, you know, because in my mind, I loved the game at bronze and silver. Gold is what really got me hooked once you start to get those, you know, really game-changing abilities. And then obviously Diamond and Champ is yet a completely different game. So is that kind of the thought process, and allowing access to higher level cards and showing what's available with these, you know, bigger unlocks of abilities?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know that we get like to that higher level cards, but you know, so we're working on the one-click set rentals that I think is gonna be released like next week or something. But again, that's sort of like step 3, right? Most people aren't getting there. It's like after you buy the spell book, just click to rent a full set of bronze level cards. So like level 3 commons, 2 rares and epics, and level 1 legendaries. And I'm like, well, even before people buy the spell book, it would be cool if like that was also the starter set of cards, and maybe you get it for like 30 days for free. And again, you haven't bought the spell book, so you can't really earn anything anyway. But so it's not, so at least there's a little bit leveled up cards. And then once, if you do buy the spell book or you want to put some money into the game, you can easily rent that set of cards going forward for cheap. So yeah, I don't know if it's exactly going to be like try this element and that element, or how it's going to be, but just like start with a very small subset for like literally your first thing in the game, which is just like, this is melee attack, right? This is ranged attack. This is how you position guys. And then, you know, it's like, okay, cool. Now you unlock these new cards and they have these abilities. So let's talk about those, you know, for battle number 2, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I was thinking about you meant. Oh, go ahead, Dave. Hop in, man.
No, that's all right. You finish. I can jump in after you're done.
Yeah, I was just gonna say with respect to the help tips, I think that's a really fascinating instrument to get implemented into the game. And man, I gotta say Jimmy would benefit from those. So I don't know if we should exclude the OG players
Definitely would.
necessarily.
I can't tell you how many times I'd be like, oh, it's a noxious fumes I freaking forgot, or just some stupid little thing, you know, overlooking a rule set.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know how detailed they can get. We're going to start with the basics, but yeah, you never know.
I would pay for that. For
Yeah.
Yeah.
X amount of DEC a season for a rule set reminder or something like that.
Well, I feel like what I was gonna say is, you know, I use Xbox Battle Vision a lot, and you know, I'm sometimes I'm hesitant, and I think this is probably true of a lot of players who like to play competitively and want to be, you know, shooting for those, you know, leaderboard positions. You're a little bit hesitant to try new meta and try new things. So
Yeah.
something that I would be really interested in seeing, and you know, shout out to Vet V, the kitchen table game mode for all. I'm sure that acronym, long ass acronym, has made it across your purview at some point, Matt. But in a nutshell, the idea is being able to play without consequence. You're not putting stuff on the line, and what I think, you know, there could be an interesting kind of intersection there where, you know, we're offering tips with an introduction of something like the battle vision, where I can go back to, you know, say Jimmy and I just faced off. I lost. I don't quite understand why, and I'm able to like rearrange my team in the like the post battle screen and kind of run it back, sort of thing, without any rewards on the line, and you know, just kind of trial and error some stuff, and you know, perhaps discover some new meta, perhaps discover the counter to the Grimbar Dune that we never, you know, kind of dug up, sort of thing. So I feel like there's a lot to unpack with those tips and tricks, and that's not to say the benefit would be exclusive to the brand new players. I feel like, you know, guys, Dave and Jimmy have been here forever. I feel like they would have a lot of fun just tooling around with those sorts of mechanics. Is that anything that has kind of crossed your mind as something
Well, I feel like-
reasonable to approach and introduce?
I feel like that's one of those things that's like awesome idea, and I'd love to put it in, but it doesn't. It's distracting from like what we're trying to do, which is get new players into the game. Like that, like it's new players are coming in, and the help tips I'm talking about are like for very basic things to start, like making sure new players understand the very basics of the game. And I feel like what you're talking about is awesome more for like the much more experienced players. So I want to be very careful. Like I love it. These are all good ideas, and I want to do all these things, but we just can't. So I want to make sure if we spend time on this, we have this great thing where you guys are analyzing your battles and doing all this, but every new person that comes to the game still doesn't even get through one battle. It's a waste, right? So that's
Sure.
why I really want to, and I tell the team this because the team also is coming up with, oh, it'd be so cool if we could do this and that and the other thing, and I'm like, I understand that would be cool, but right now we got to make sure the guy that comes in that doesn't know what a melee attack does, like that's what we're focusing on first and foremost. And, you know, down the line, we might get to, you know, that more advanced stuff. But that's like step 10, and we're on step 0 right now. So that's why I try not to focus too much on it.
Yeah, well, some of it would be, you know, trying to find what's easy to implement and what's a huge project. You know, from if I understand correctly, which I may not, but it's a thing like a challenge mode, you know, something where it is kind of a kitchen table game mode that already exists for testing new cards in meta, you know, where you could select certain parameters and certain attack types, or, you know, select the battle parameters, splinters, all that stuff. You know, like for example, I bought a torch visor, or whatever it is, the fire melee
Vizier.
attack card, the Vizier, yeah.
Love that
Yeah.
card.
Because it kicked my ass. I played a game and it just crushed me. I was like, oh, I forgot about that card. I'm slowly buying Rebellion. I went and I bought it. I just bit the bullet. I cashed in some SPS way too cheap and bought this card. And I was like, all right, let's try it out. And this was last night, and I played 10 battles in a row, and fire came up once, and it was like a magic only. And I was just like, I'm sitting there like, I just want to try this card for God's sake. So that type of thing where you could play, again, this is that kitchen table game mode for all. And that not just for experienced players, but for new players coming who just want to try things and try the game. And would that be easy? Not a huge project, but because it already exists in testing, is that something that could be relatively easy to toss in, not tomorrow, but in a few months when you do have a little time?
Yeah, probably. And that's the type of thing, the people that we have working here are also players. So typically for things like that, we sort of suggest like, hey, that would be cool, and then find out that like someone was bored on a weekend and went and put it in. So yeah, so I feel like I don't want to, if I make it, even if something's easy, that's the thing, like everything is still a project, right? Everything you do, if you change one line of code in the website, we have a review process that has to go through. There's a release process, right? And then there's always the chance, that things cause unknown problems. So it's one thing, like for a lot of people who haven't done a complex software project like this, there's really no such thing as like a really easy change. Which is, and sometimes we get a little bogged down with things because we start doing a bunch of really easy changes, and then a couple of them have some unforeseen consequences or effects, and then the team ends up spending hours and hours debugging them, and all of a sudden our actual priorities are totally derailed for a week. Sure. So that's why it's so hard for me, because like, I'm not saying no, your idea is not good. It's awesome. I would do that, right? I would play this mode. I just want to be a little careful about saying to the team like, hey, putting someone like, do this, because that person is going to be spending some amount of time not working on the core priorities. And then if we, and there's like probably 50 things like that, right? You know what I mean? Like cool ideas that aren't like big projects, aren't too hard, and then we end up with 50 of them, and all of a sudden it's it's months of work. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to discount the idea. If it's something like sense. The team, a team member is like interested in just like spending a weekend and updating, taking their own time and updating challenge mode and doing that, I'm like totally on board for that. But I'm trying to keep my focus very clear and the team's focus very clear. Like, this is what we're doing. Make sure, like, I want to see numbers. Like right now we're going through like every single step of onboarding from when a player first goes to splinterlands.com till they leave, exactly what happens. And focusing on that. And I guarantee none of that is, oh, I couldn't try all the different card combinations I wanted, right? We're not there yet. So that's what I mean when I'm saying like, awesome idea, would love to get that in. It's just not on yet. My radar right now.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to throw in is we're talking about the new player experience, and I think that means something different to a lot of different people. And in this conversation, I would say Jangles and Jimmy are what I would consider to be like enthusiasts. In other words, they are, up on the game, buying the latest cards, knowing all the strategies, remember every rule set, stuff like that. But then there's people like me who, I call casual, because I can pick up a game and whatever cards I got in there, I don't remember what they were, but I jump into it and I play the best I can. And if I win, I feel good because I feel like, hey, I won against somebody who knew what they were doing, kind of thing. So I think that the casual player, one thing, and I guess in the form of a question to you, Matt, is I think we've had a situation where we have a high percentage of enthusiasts, and we've lost a lot of casual players. And I think that the big numbers are going to be in the casual players, especially when they're first coming on, because it takes a while to groom, somebody who's an enthusiast, but anybody. I mean, my wife's sisters will play the game and enjoy the game, but they're certainly not enthusiasts. They're just casual. And I think there's definitely a spot for that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, right. So there's like different parts in the life cycle. There's like new person coming in to, like trying out the game, to becoming a casual player, to becoming an enthusiast, right? And I think that's sort of what I was trying to say, is I feel like we've been focusing a lot on the casual player to enthusiast piece of it, but we're not getting enough people even getting to there. So that's what I mean about the steps. So my focus is on getting a bunch. I want to get a bunch more people into more players, right? I want to get a bunch more players, and if we get a bunch more players and they eventually have a bad experience and leave, that's still a step up from where we are right now, because we're not getting any new players, right? So step one, get a bunch of new players. We got to figure that problem out. Then we got to figure out, okay, we got a bunch of new players. How do we make sure they have a great experience so they become casual players, right? And then step three is, okay, great, we got a bunch of casual players. How do we get them to be enthusiasts? And I just think we were starting at the end there of like,
Right.
How do we get casual players to be enthusiasts, or how do we get enthusiasts even more things that they want? And at the beginning of the funnel, there's nobody coming in.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think you're right there. Oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
And the other thing I was going to say on the new player experience part of it, I think that a lot of people, and they've asked me, like, when is it going to happen? And my answer, and I guess your comment on this, but my answer is it's not necessarily one thing. It's a lot of things. And there was a lot of roadblocks, that were in the process, in the system that you had to get out. So I'll use things like the bots and modern. There was a whole bunch of very similar teams at one time that were, basically made it impossible for a new player to get there. So they would get there, and if they did finally buy a spell book, they got there and they got the crap beat out of them in a couple of days of that, and they quit. So in my opinion, you've already made a lot of progress on the new player experience, but I don't think you're really getting credit for it. So, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you feel you've made some progress and people aren't fully understanding it?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm in the same boat, because I'm just like, man, this stuff, it takes so long. Everything always takes longer, and there's more problems along the way. But like, it's like, I don't know, I can't come up with a good analogy, but we have to like set up all the pieces first, and it takes a really long time to set up all the pieces, and like, all the other problems are still happening while we're spending all this time setting up the pieces. And then maybe like dominoes, right? You're like, why, it's taking forever setting up all these dominoes, and we accidentally knocked down a little part, and we got to go fix it. It like takes a long time, and people are complaining. And my hope is like, we get to this point where, okay, now we're good, and we knock down all the dominoes, right? And things fall into place. So yeah, it's also super hard when you're running, like if we weren't a live project and we were building something new from scratch, like this stuff would get done real fast. But we're trying to update, like the tech modernization project is like literally updating every piece of our game while the game is active. It's like replacing the engine on a train while the train's running down the track. That's what we're doing. So if it was just like start from scratch, build a site that works really well on mobile, that would be quick. But we can't. We have like, we have everything existing to work off of. So that's the whole glint system and the whole changing to all these things. We implement that, but we don't get it right the first time, and we got to fix things, and we got to go back, and there's errors, and whatever. And so like it's just all, it's hard to predict all that. But the goal.
Do you feel that you're moving through it? Like you're not 100% of the way there, but do you feel like you're a zero? Or do you feel like you're
We make a ton of progress. I think fixing the bot situation is paramount to us being able to give out rewards for players. right, for real players, and we need to be able to do that. Because it's always been like, oh, especially in bronze and lower leagues, like we just get crap and you can't ever do anything, right? And that was because if we gave out anything significant, it gets farmed, to hell. So we fixed that, and then we can actually give out stuff, right? So new players have a better experience. And the Glint system that's taken so long and so many tweaks and things, like that's a great way we can do it too. So these are all like pieces of the puzzle. And yeah, we've like made a ton of progress. It's it takes a little longer than expected, but now, so I feel like
I just want you guys to get a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
In other words,
I appreciate that. I mean, but I don't think we should get credit until we deliver results also. So I'm not, that's ultimately what matters. And if we just get credit for this partial done project and we never complete it, we never see the results, then I don't want to take credit for anything, because that's what we need to do. So my eyes are on the prize, and the prize is, to me, getting our conversion numbers good. Like we have 100 or so people that are coming in and signing up. I want a much larger number of those to be playing battles, and I want some percentage of those to become casual players or just players at all, because that lets us then go do marketing. Like I know if we spend time and resources, we can get a whole lot more people coming to splinterlands.com and checking it out. But if we do it now, it's all going to be wasted, because there's like technical problems, doesn't work well on mobile. A lot of them come on mobile. So it's just like, it's a big waste. So I'm like, I don't even want people to go market it, because everyone we get to come is going to have a bad experience. I don't want to do that yet. So, like my hope is that we get all the pieces into place. We see this conversion funnel happening where it's like, okay, we can see this percentage of people that come to splinterlands.com end up as a player, however we define player, played X number of battles, stick around for this long, maybe even put some money into the ecosystem. And then I want to turn on the floodgates of marketing, which really means get a marketing person, right? And we've been exploring a lot of different options for that for a little bit down the road. But that's, I don't necessarily, I appreciate what you're saying, Dave, but I don't give myself any credit until that happens, until we get a whole lot more people as players.
Well, real quickly, I want to circle back to Dave, your comment about casual versus enthusiast, and I think you're selling yourself short. I won't ask you, because we're recording and on air. I'm not going to ask you to recite the rap that you shared with me the other day that you wrote, reciting all 100 abilities. So I won't put you on the spot there, but you are being a little bit modest in your more casual approach. But but so you mentioned the casual versus enthusiast, and what that kind of life cycle looks like, and how we've kind of focused on the bigger tail that is enthusiast and kind of veteran player. And what sticks out in my mind with respect to that is the change of the leaks and the subsequent shitstorm that was thrown. I'm partially responsible. I created that survey and delivered a lot of feedback, or gathered a lot of feedback, and delivered that to you and Nate. And there was, I think, a couple of town halls that survey came up as a comment. It feels like a lot of the pain that was a result of that very massive change that the team implemented and we're sticking to is a result of a lot of the player base being very top heavy, and being top heavy is folks playing with those max cards.
Yeah.
So how are we kind of moving on that trajectory to fixing those things to where the gold level decks don't feel like they're just getting housed by max players and they can't escape silver? How close are we to kind of seeing this vision come to full fruition, where there's an enjoyable experience regardless of your investment?
Yeah, I mean, the top heaviness of modern is a huge problem. So the temporary solution that we're working on is just the modern bots, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Just like having a bunch of non-earning bots that play in Modern with lower level decks to just even it out, so that people with lower level decks get more reasonable opponents. Royal Eagle and Dave are leading that charge, so they actually have more info than I do on the details of that and how it's going. And also the changes to Wild were meant to help with that too. And I'm still looking at that and how that works out. But a lot of the issue was also that it was a comparison between Modern and Wild, right? So Modern was really hard and Wild was really easy, which made Modern even just like look bad by comparison. I think if they were similarly difficult, it would have been less of an issue. So those are sort of like the short term, like see what we can do with the current situation solutions. And it's just like see what works, try different things, and do what we can do. Ultimately, the long-term solution is get a lot more players in here, right? If we get a lot of players, they are not going to have max level cards. And that will, we can get thousands of new players in the game. All of a sudden, it goes from top heavy max level decks to a bunch of newer lower level decks. And like, to me, really, that's the solution to almost everything. Get more players in the game. There's really only so much we can do without getting new players in the game. Like, there's really nothing we can do that's going to make a big difference if there's just no new players coming in. So that's why I'm so like dead set and trying to just focus on that. That if we get new players coming in, it fixes those problems that you were saying with the decks, breakdowns. That means new money coming into the ecosystem, which solves a lot of problems there.
It's everything. I mean, that's your whole, since day one, this whole thing, the digital scarcity program or model is based on constantly onboarding new people.
And we just haven't focused on that at all for years.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah,
like,
dude. I was screaming about that, but and again, this was previous management. I remember like, oh, being said, we're literally not, even focusing on that. I remember like screaming in Discord, like, you have to focus on like all the time.
For how much you and a few other people brought it up, like 90% of the current players are screaming about other things, right? And it's sort of like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So like very few people were complaining that like our tutorial sucks and doesn't work for new players. And everyone was screaming about the leaderboards and the rewards and the reward cards and the SPS and the this and the that. So, I fall into that, I take at least part of the blame for that too, of like, when everyone's yelling about these things, we focus on those things, and most people aren't saying anything about the onboarding experience. And
because that was seeing the onboard.
You don't deal with that every day.
I did once. I remember the little guy popping up and saying like, "Hey, boom, put your put this guy."
So that's what I'm trying to do now, which is also difficult. I'm trying to say like, hey, all these ideas, all these things you guys are mad about or want changed or don't like or whatever. I'm like, awesome. I'm ignoring all that. Like, I just have to ignore all that, right? Because I need to get new people. Like, I want thousands of new people to have all the same problems that you guys are having, right? That's what I want. I want 1,000. I want 5,000, 10,000 other people all complaining about this same stuff, because then that means then it's time to start focusing on those things. But right now we have a shrinking number of people complaining about that stuff.
Matt, you just offered some numbers, and I'm assuming you just pulled those out of thin air, or maybe you didn't. But I think you probably have a reasonable expectation of, what volume of players, and we've heard some speculation. We've seen guys like Aftersound crunch some numbers and say, hey, we need X number of players, and all of a sudden Chaos Legion is a non-issue. Right? Hey, we need X number of players, and all of a sudden our reward cards are a non-issue. So have you guys
non-issue meaning like the fact that there's so many of them?
That the demand absorbs all of the supply.
Yeah.
Have you guys started to spitball what do those numbers actually look like, and what is a reasonable, attainable goal? Or was that 5,000 to 10,000 players that you just mentioned? Is that rooted with some research, or were those numbers just kind of plucked?
No, so those numbers have nothing to do with like Chaos Legion card supply, because I'm also like, that's not really the problem we're trying to solve. we're trying to solve getting new people in here, right? It doesn't matter if it's not enough to soak up all the Chaos Legion supply. We're trying to get as many new players as we possibly can, right? It's not.
Sure.
I don't think a lot of players, like new players who come in and become players, are gonna necessarily leave because there's an oversupply of Chaos Legion cards. They're also not people who, bought Chaos Legion initially. So that problem is only a problem for the people who were around when Chaos Legion launched. So that's not what I'm looking like. Getting new players is ultimately the best solution to that problem. Like I said, it kind of solves everything. But that's not what I'm focusing on. So I'm just focusing on how many new players can we get, right? The more, the better. So I don't have a specific number. Obviously, if we do all these things and it's a very small number of new players, then, we've failed. But I don't think in the scheme of things, I do think the number, like even a few thousand, if we get a few thousand more active casual players, right? That would, I think, completely change the dynamic of this entire project. And that's a small number in the scheme of things. And I think, again, this stuff is still going to take a while, and that's frustrating. But my expectation is by the end of the year, we are going to be in a position to start some serious marketing campaigns. And, if we can't get a few thousand casual players in here when we do that, then I think we've really failed. So I think it's a pretty low bar to hit. And these aren't new problems. Again, it's not like, how do we figure out how to do a crypto-based game economy and deal with blockchain and all this stuff. It's just like, it's standard stuff. Like, how do we teach people how to do battles, right? How do we not throw a paywall in front of them? How do we make sure it works well on mobile? Like, these are normal things like that have been solved many times before. So it's frustrating that it takes time. I'm with you guys. I'm with our community. I'm as frustrated as everybody about how long it takes. But like I said, we're changing the engine out on a moving train here with very limited resources.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question there. In that response, Matt. I was going to ask. I think it was a couple of months ago that you kind of earmarked perhaps Q4 for the move to hire a marketing position. Is that still, are we still on pace for that to kind of take place? And have you started to get kind of a better idea? You mentioned that you guys were kind of sitting around the campfire discussing what are options with respect to what a marketing position should look like for Team Splinterlands. Does that mean that you've got particular individuals in mind, or are we looking for a specific set of items on a resume? What does that conversation look like with respect to the ideal marketing candidate?
Yeah, I do have some people in mind, potentially, and also some some services that I'm aware of that might be able to help. But it's the type of thing I feel like I will know it when I see it, in the sense that, like, I've been part of this space for a long time. I've seen what I think are really successful marketing campaigns, often for really crappy projects. And it's not like the type of Web3 marketing is different than your traditional marketing. I'm not looking for someone that's just like, yeah, we can put up Facebook ads and track the conversions. I want this is going to be someone that's thinking outside the box here, right? One of our biggest assets is you guys, is our community. So I don't want someone that's like putting up Facebook ads. I want someone that's coming up with like really cool, unique ideas of how we can get all of our players involved, and like doing some big, maybe X Twitter campaign, right? Where everyone like posts stuff and there's some type of reward model. I've seen these things for other projects that just like my entire Twitter feed is just taken with all this this stuff, because they have a really good incentive mechanism for people who are part of the project. Stuff like that, like people who are like outside the box thinkers of like, here's our situation, here's our assets, our community, all this stuff. Like, let's come up with really cool ways to make a splash. Is what I'm looking for, and I'm pretty sure I'll know that when we come across the right person or group to lead that effort.
Cool. So we had I don't know how much time you have to dedicate to consuming the community's content, and certainly not the People's Guild episodes. We 2-3 hours is a lot to ask from folks. But we had Crypto Eater on a couple of weeks back. Jimmy and I hosted him, and we were talking a little bit about kind of the double-edged sword that is the length of Splinterlands, the company's tenure in the Web3 space.
Yeah.
On one side, we've been here for 6 years. We're tried and true. We've survived 2 bears, and we've gone through thick and thin. On the other side, there's a lot of fresh, shiny new things out there. And that's usually what gets the traction, especially in the crypto space. I tend to be of the mindset that, eventually things are going to turn around, and I mean, from an industry perspective, and folks are going to be looking for that stability, especially the gamers. They want something that's tried and true. It's proven, it's fun, it's polished. And I think ultimately that bodes really well for our argument to tell a very compelling story. Why should you come play Splinterlands? I'd love to kind of hear your perspective, both as a player, as a CEO, and as somebody who's very plugged into the crypto space. How does that 6-year, 10-year bode for us? Being able to attract, A, this marketing person, and B, the ideal mass of players that we hope will come and enjoy the game.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. It's a double-edged sword, so to speak. Also, from the investor perspective, like people just like, it's funny, and I've seen this. It's not just in this space or with Splinterlands. It's with everything. Investors get more excited when something isn't released yet, when it's like an idea, because then it's whatever you can imagine. Everyone always imagines how amazing it's going to be, right? But then when something is launched, even if it does well, it's never as amazing as people imagine it in their minds. So it's always like not as interesting as the brand new shiny thing that's not released yet. So that just is what it is, and that's part of the work of the marketing person, right? So it's not just like put some ads out for Splinterlands again. Like I said, it's more about how do you make this seem like, hey, we've been around for 6 years, so it's not a rug pull, it's stable, it's not going anywhere, you can trust it, they've got their shit together, but also make this campaign that makes it feel like new and exciting, that something's happening, right? That it's been around for 6 years, but you can get in now on these new things that are happening. And so like the SPS token was sort of like that. I mean, obviously we're not going to launch another token, but that's the type of outside the box thinking. And I don't necessarily have the ideas, right? I'm not really the marketing person, but that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for, is exactly what you said, how we make this feel new and exciting, while also reaping the benefits of being around for a while.
Yeah, it's a fine line we got to walk there, right? That's I feel like you mentioned the investor perspective, and I think we saw a bunch of rug pulls. Rug pulls continue to exist, and I feel like that's something that should speak volumes to potential investors, is that it's clear that that's not going to happen here. And you look at the microcap that is the SPS total value, and I feel like it's ripe for the picking. Obviously I'm biased, and as objective as I try to be, at the end of the day, I love this game, and I think it influences my my perspective, and therefore my words. But yeah, it's exciting to think about. So we talked about, I'd love to kind of shift gears with you, Matt, and talk Hive. I don't know how comfortable you are addressing this stuff kind of in open plain sight, but
I wanted to say something about, you mentioned SPS price and investors and all that stuff before we jump onto Hive. One of the things I've been thinking recently, I was always very focused on the SPS price and asset prices for a long time, less, for myself, but more, just obviously for the good of the ecosystem and our players, and everyone's focused on that. And, at some point, now that it's down sub a cent, to me, it's like it doesn't matter as much anymore. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make a difference as much. So I sort of like stopped focusing on that as much. And I feel like a lot of people also like don't necessarily focus. It's like it's already fallen that much or whatever. Like it doesn't really change anything if it goes from 0.6 cents, 0.7 cents to 0.5, whatever. Like so there's less focus on it. I think that might be good. And I think a lot of the issue is, you know, so much focus on asset prices and less focus on the game and the product. So my hope is that with new people coming in, one of the things I want to do is like stop showing things in US dollars on the site, and just like a normal game, you show things priced in the in-game currency. So when we have new players coming in and all the stuff we're working on and going through the new onboarding experience and earning these tokens and these things, and they just, you know, they just think of it more like a traditional game, and less about like how much dollar value I'm getting. And you know, also like on Hive, I've thought this too. Like people will take so much time to post stuff online, right? So much time, so much effort, even if very few people read it, right? But it feels like this big accomplishment a lot of times. People get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And I've always thought this about Hive and Steam back in the day. Like when you post something on there, spend all this time on it, and it gets like 10 cents, you're at it highlights to you, you're like, oh wow, this is a waste of my time, right? But if you didn't show that 10 cents, then you ascribe your own value to it. And I'd like that to, and or even if you just show it in like Hive tokens, right? Yeah, people can look up the price of it and whatever, but it's like, oh wow, I might have earned like 10 Hive. You know, I guess in this case that's like $2, but whatever. Like in Splinterlands, you know, you could earn, you know, 1,000 SPS, and it still might be a small amount, or 100 SPS. Like it, but it seems like if you don't put a dollar value on it, it seems like a bigger number, even 10 tokens. Like you know, you sort of ascribe whatever value you want to it, and then if you just look like, oh, I can buy things in game, and it just costs like, or I'm getting, you know, 1,000 glint, and I can buy these things. I think it helps us longer term to get away from market pricing and just more into like the game experience. I don't know. I didn't have like a specific point there, but I just think like that's sort of the direction we're going. It's less about here's the market price of all these things. Here you can sell stuff and do all these things, but it's more just like a here's this game experience. It's actually a pretty fun and unique and cool experience. And like, yes, these are also assets that have value, but that's like less, I want to focus less on that, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great call. And I you know, I think I remember you sharing your shift in perspective around asset values with respect to kind of your adoption of Bitcoin at some point in, you know, one of the town halls many moons ago, where you're not looking at necessarily the USD asset value, you're looking at total volume of the asset.
Yeah.
And it's a really critical psychological shift. So I'd be curious to see how would that work out. I like the general, you know, shift in philosophy there. Jimmy, Dave, did you have something to add to that before we shift gears and talk Hive?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. So Matt, I think you mentioned it must have been the most recent town hall. We were talking about a DHF proposal that you were I think penciling together at that point, looking to reach out to Hive to discuss supporting the project. Are you in any position to share, you know, kind of a progress report, give us some updates and tell us what's happening there?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff together. So I plan to put up a Hive DAO proposal along with some proposals to the Splinterlands DAO. So the Hive DAO is just very simple, like, you know, obviously it's simple in concept. You know, Splinterlands has been a huge supporter of the Hive blockchain, huge promoter of it. We've burned millions of Hive over the years. We've, you know, been behind the creation of Hive Engine, Hive Keychain, all this stuff, and you know, now we need your help. You know, we need Hive's help. My hope is that the Hive community will support us on that. I mean, as a Hive stakeholder, I do think like that's what Hive needs to do, is actually like really support good projects that can actually bring people to Hive. And if we're at all successful with what we're doing, we're going to go back to bringing lots and lots of people to Hive. All those thousands of players I mentioned that we want to get into the game, those are going to be Hive users. Some number of them are also going to expand to the general Hive ecosystem. So I think it's a no-brainer, but we'll see how that goes. But alongside that, I also plan to put out 2 proposals to the SPS DAO. One of them is to fund the development of validators, because that's really the SPS. That's like the whole purpose of the SPS DAO's funds, right? Like the SPS DAO raised money through a private sale. That's why it has funds. And the reason for those funds was to build the SPS token. The mistake that I think we made was we sort of went ahead and put in this temporary solution early on. And then we just kind of left it at that for the most part. It worked. You can use your SPS token. You can do all the stuff you want to do with it. And like validators was sort of this like, not necessary thing. And, we shouldn't have done that, right? We should have from day one been like, here's this temporary solution, but it is only temporary. The DAO needs to use its funds for what it's supposed to be to build the SPS token. And now the company's in a position where we can't spend the money to keep doing that. So that, again, I think a no-brainer proposal to the SPS DAO to say, hey, fund this, and that will make it a priority, right? So in the past, people are like, well, you keep saying it's going to be out, it's going to be out. Yeah. Well, the problem is, one, I wasn't in charge of the priorities until recently. And 2, that couldn't have been a priority for our business, because it's really, that's for the SPS DAO. It's not a priority for Splinterlands, the company, because it doesn't get us revenue. It doesn't help us directly. So it's just never been a priority. But if the DAO funds it, and the specific developers that are doing it will be just working on that project, they'll be paid by the DAO to work on that and get it done, and they're committing to get it done by a certain date. Which I think they'll be quite early on, assuming that's approved. So the second proposal will be to fund a bunch of promo card sales. So, typically the company, we do promo card sales. That's our main way of getting funds in between major sets. I would prefer the DAO just pay us to do the promo card sales, and then the DAO gets the benefits of it. And then that's a situation where the DAO can even pay us in DEC tokens, which I think will be a lot more palatable to people than USDC or ETH or whatever. So I want to do that all together. It's sort of like this package to Hive and to the SPS community, and saying, here's what we need from all of you to make that to it's a group effort, right? Our company's been taking on the bulk of all this, and we had the resources to do it in the past. But at this point, we need everyone to come and chip in and kind of do their part and take their pieces of the project. So that was a very long answer. Those are all, I have drafts of all those ready. I'm getting comments from the community and internally. I'm still also waiting for some internal stuff to get figured out and finalized. We're still finishing up at splitting Invenium off to a separate corporation. That stuff also just takes a lot of time to get all the paperwork done. So I want to, before I take money from any of these organizations or even other investors for Splinterlands, I want to make sure that's done 100%. And we're not in a situation where for some reason, somehow funds end up getting used for something other than Splinterlands, but that should be all wrapped up real soon. And then those proposals are going to go out.
Okay.
So a couple things, like with Hive, it almost seems like Splinterlands is at this point. I don't know a ton about Hive, but it seems like Splinterlands is kind of the lifeblood of the Hive blockchain right now. Like if Splinterlands was not there, they would I don't know what they'd have going on, or how much they'd have going on, or what, and how vital Splinterlands is to the survival of the Hive blockchain. It almost seems like it would be in their best interest, like you said, not only to help them succeed, but to also help with everything, get the validators going, Like you pointed out, the SPS DAO, a lot of our funds came in the form of Splinterlands currency, which is way down at this point. If I understand correctly, Hive has, I believe it's a couple $100,000 a day of potential budgets that can be allotted to helping Hive projects. It seems like those are some relatively deep pockets, and it would be in the best interest of the Hive community to say, we're happy to help with what you need to get you going. And that includes the validator development. It includes what the company needs to get rolling. It includes any maybe advertising you would need to get going, company operational cost for a little while to get things to a comfortable position. And again, the pockets are much deeper there than with the SPL, the Splinterlands DAO, SPS DAO at the moment. And there's other blockchains that are offering millions of dollars to projects to move to other blockchains. What's your view on that and the line there? Like, do we start looking at other blockchains? Do we start funding? I mean, what happens if the SPS DAO funds, the SPS chain, and then we move off a Hive because they won't fund the company? Like, I don't know. It seems like this interlocking web here, where Splinterlands is almost like, we're on Hive. Do we stay on Hive? We'd obviously like to. What would you consider moving off if they won't fund us, or?
Yeah, it's tough because it's not like it's just the EVM chain where we can just take all our smart contracts and go somewhere else, right? So that would be like a massive, massive project that would totally upend everything. So I don't necessarily see us leaving Hive. The big issue from the Hive standpoint is if, we fail, right? And we're gone and we're not contributing to Hive. So it is possible that we could move to another chain. It's possible there could be a fork of Hive, right? Hive itself is a fork of Steem. So all those things are possibilities. And I guess, like I said, it seems like a no-brainer, but how it is with communities of people. It's like the SPS DAO, the Hive DAO is a similar thing of all different sorts of, people all over the world with all their different views. Some of them might not like Splinterlands for whatever reason, but to me, I like, and you asked about like, what does Hive have going for it? I mean, not a lot. And that's why Hive has gone pretty much nowhere. Steem, was one of the top 10 blockchains years ago. It's just fallen. Even if Splinterlands were to leave, I don't think Hive is going to go anywhere. It'll still do its thing. It'll still have its people that will post, and it'll just continue to fall. But I do think the Hive community sort of needs to get it together, and they need to start being proactive and going out and finding projects, Splinterlands and projects like Splinterlands, and go getting them here, right? And giving them money to do it, because that's what all the other chains are doing. Right. And if Splinterlands doesn't do it, then if Hive doesn't do it, then people aren't going to come to Hive. Right. It's just going to keep falling down, down and down and down in the rankings and in usage and everything. So this is like, to me, a good first step for the Hive blockchain, I think, to say like, hey, we're going to help Splinterlands. And then hopefully we're successful and we start getting, a lot of excitement. I mean, because if you look in the past, in like 2021 and 22, when Splinterlands was on the top of charts and it was the bull market, Hive was never on any charts for anything, top dApps, all this stuff. And every single, then Aggroed and I were on shows and interviews and all these things, and Hive, where it would have not been talked about at all, right? We were, I think, getting the word out about Hive to the crypto community more than it has ever been, except maybe, initially when it forked off of Steem and that whole drama happened. And that's all gone now, right? So I want to get
the point.
Yeah,
kind
so
of the point. And
it
would it
seems
be
like a
unrealistic
no-brainer.
to ask them for all of the help right now, even before going to the SPS DAO for validators?
Well, so that, I mean, yeah, so that, ultimately they've never given anywhere near this money to anything before. So I think you gotta, we could just go in and say, hey, help do everything and, put all this money in, and that's just gonna end up failing, even if it's for stupid reasons, and then then we're just in a bad situation. So I'm trying to do this more smart and understand that not everyone might think logically or the way we do about this stuff. So and I do think it is really important that the SPS DAO pay to build its own tokens infrastructure. Like I really like it. It has some millions of dollars in non-Splinterlands assets that was raised literally for that purpose. Like that's what you raise money for a project, is to build that project. So that's what really the purpose of those funds was for, is to build out the infrastructure needed for its own token. So I think and the DAO has the funds, right? And I think that's what they should be used for. It's up to the community to decide. And then I think in the future, if the DAO also doesn't need as much money, right? So that even if the DAO, like if the DAO pays for, Claiborne, I think that's it, really. So the DAO, it's like a lot of people have brought up the question, like, if the DAO's funds run out or run low, like what's it going to do? How's it going to sustain itself? It doesn't need much money. It'll sustain itself fine. Our company is not the case. Our company has a lot of expenses, right? Where if we don't pay them, we're not going to be able to operate this game and this product. The DAO is not like that. So I think, in my opinion, the DAO should use its own funds that it has available. It doesn't really need, I'm sure it can use it for things, but it doesn't need it for other things. It should fund the building of its own tokens infrastructure. And I think the Hive should help our company, because the company's the one that's been doing all this stuff for Hive over the years. I just think that's a way that makes more sense in splitting this up. And it's not like going to bankrupt the DAO or anything like that. So that's why I'm setting it up this way.
There's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, but before I do want to talk about the validator stuff, but before we completely shift gears out of the Hive stuff, do you have any idea, and are you at liberty to disclose this information, as far as the activity on Hive? How much is directly attributable to Splinterlands? Are we 80% of what's happening on Hive?
Yeah, no, a lot of people say that. I think we might have been at one point. My guess off the top of my head is it's only something like 10% of the actual like transaction volume. But that's the thing, like that can change. If Splinterlands is successful, we could double, triple, even more pretty easily and still not get back to where we were in 2021 or 22. And that goes up to 10, 20, 30%. I don't actually see any other way, like anything that the Hive blockchain has going for it that can do that can bring thousands of new people in. Like there's just really nothing. I mean, there's a few other small projects. So like if I'm the Hive DAO and I'm a one member, I'm like, what are the ways we can use our available funds and resources to go get the most attention and people in here as possible? And Splinterlands seems to be the easiest one. Like it's a lot harder to go get some new project to come in and understand this and build out and like see what happens. Like we've shown, like we're already on Hive, right? So you don't have to come get us. We've done it before, right? There's been a change in company direction and leadership. So the issues, the going the wrong way that we did shouldn't be a problem again. Again, to me, it's a no-brainer. But like right now, I expect we're somewhat like 10% of Hive transaction volume. But I think we're the best bet for increasing that transaction volume significantly.
I've often thought that, based on how you've talked, how I've heard Cryptomancer talk, and the guys who were coding that, was it Immortal Creed that was on the show a few weeks ago? Yeah. That Hive's, it seems like Splinterlands has the potential to bring Hive into the mainstream.
Yeah, 100%.
If
and that's what Hive should be looking to do. And I think
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they shouldn't stop with Splinterlands. I think they should go out and be like, yeah, we want to get 5 more things like Splinterlands on here.
Right.
But so
well, and using Splinterlands and the ecosystem as a blueprint to attract and appropriately suit these potential residents of Hive is a great use case.
Well, and I kind of I make all these cases in the proposal, and one of the things that to me was like glaring was, I don't know, you guys know the Real Wolf who made the Splinter Royale game.
Yeah.
And he's a top Hive witness, top Hive block producer. He's as gung-ho Hive as you can get. And he moved that game off. It's like Ether Legends now or something, right? So if like, and he was trying to get funding and support. I don't know. I mean, I know he asked the SPS DAO, which I still thought would be good to fund, but made less sense than going to the Hive DAO. I don't know if he did that or not, but like that's a glaring thing. If like one of the top Hive witnesses and someone who's been a Hive developer and enthusiast for so many years isn't even building their own project on Hive, like that's an epic fail in my book.
Yeah, I would agree. Interesting. Well,
so we'll see. I mean, maybe the community thinks it's a great idea and it passes with flying colors, and that's great. Maybe not. I don't know. We're gonna see soon enough.
Well, it's going to be a big second half as we enter Q3 with all of these things kind of looming. With respect to the validators, but did we as a community miss the mark with the proposal from Dehota DJ 3 or 4 months ago? I think there was something where we set aside something like $350K for hiring the development of SPS validator stuff. Should we have passed that?
I mean, yes, but I understand, I guess, why we didn't. And I like, again, this is all our fault. Like we went, like none of this was clear to people. Like we went ahead and we implemented this current temporary solution, but we never, we had tons of stuff going on. It was a crazy time in 2021, to say the least. So we were like, okay, we got a temporary solution in place. SPS works. And we moved on to other things, but it should have been very clear from day one that like this is the SPS DAO's main responsibility. Like this is what it exists for, to build out the full, real, decentralized, open source SPS token. Like that is what the DAO is for. All this other stuff is extraneous compared to that. But we didn't worry about that because there's so much other stuff going on. It was just like craziness, and SPS worked, right? And it's only been brought to the forefront because at this point, because we've just gotten a position where we can't keep going like this anymore. And so now, like, the community is, I don't think they understand this. They're like, hey, no, that's, SPS works. It does its thing. The Splinterlands team's been doing this. Why should we put up money for something? And I don't think a lot of people in the community also understand, that the company is running the SPS token in a very centralized manner right now. I mean, it's not how it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be all like, if our company were to shut down or have server problems or whatever, like you can't use the SPS token. Like it's not what a cryptocurrency is all about, right? I couldn't imagine any exchange that would really do any due diligence. Would just be like, we're not touching this thing with a 10-foot pole. It's just one company running a database. We could screw up something and delete the whole token. It's all really bad, and it's not the stuff that I think a lot of our players understand or really care about on a day-to-day basis. But the proposal is going to make it clear, like it's a liability for the company too, right? It's a real bad look if any type of regulator or the SEC looks at it. It's not like, hey, this is decentralized token. It's like, no, your company's just running this whole thing. It's really bad. It's our fault for not pushing for this from day one. I'm not surprised the community didn't pass that proposal because I don't think they understand this. But this new proposal is just going to make it like blatantly clear, like the company's not going to keep implement. This is a temporary solution, and I think the proposal says the solution is going to go away in a year, and the SPS DAO needs to figure out other solutions in that time. And we offer a solution, right? We have developers that have been working on it and that can keep working on it. And if the SPS DAO wants to fund them, they're committing to getting it launched by a certain date.
How much of the project do you think has been completed at this point?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think we're getting close. And I've been saying, like, I see no reason why by the end of this year this isn't live. So, you know, there's always the unexpected that comes up. And this is like, this is very different than even like land or stuff we're doing in the Splinterlands game. This is building our own layer 2 blockchain system. So it's a big project. And so part of it, and it doesn't end also, like the proposal is not just a bunch of money up front, which I think is not great. So the proposal is just to pay for the development costs on a monthly basis for the next year. So it's like the thing should get launched hopefully by the end of the year. But then, you know, just because you launch something doesn't mean it's done, right? There's going to be bugs, there's going to be problems, there's going to be new features, there's going to be all this stuff. So it's like the DAO is saying, hey, we're gonna do this. And if the DAO ultimately doesn't, and if they don't want to hire these guys that we have working on it, that's fine, you know. But the DAO is going to have to find someone else to do it, or else, you know, we're not going to be able to do it. And at some point, the SPS token would stop working if that's the case. So.
Yeah, we don't want that. So when you say higher on a monthly basis, does that mean it could cost less than the proposed amount that we'd be allocating? Like, let's say arbitrary number, $500,000 or $1 million that we need to make this happen, or 200,000, whatever, and we're putting X amount a month. It could cost less if things go smooth. Or, you know, or
well, yeah. So another thing about it being monthly is that if for any reason the community is not happy with it, you know, you can put up another proposal to cancel it, right? So you wouldn't necessarily have to pay the entire funds. I also expect that, you know, crypto in general will be doing better in the future towards the end of this year and next year. So
the bull run hasn't started yet.
Like, so right. So, you know, I know the DAO has a lot of ETH, so I'd rather not have it sell that ETH or give up that ETH now and just do it in monthly installments, you know, so maybe it's less of an issue down the line. I don't think, though, it's not a situation where, again, when it's launched, then the DAO stops paying for it. I mean, the DAO could do that, but I think this is going to be an ongoing thing, and the DAO is going to need to, even after a year is up, assuming this proposal passes, I think the DAO is going to need to have at least like one developer that's working on this, right? You can't just leave it out there. My hope is that the DAO will be,
you mean?
Yeah, so hopefully it'll be cheaper, and the DAO will be in a much better situation to fund it, so it's not a big deal. But this is part of the things that the DAO should fund. So there's like Clayboyne, and he's a manager running these things. And then I think the next thing is, you know, it's going to need to fund some level of development work to run its own infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that my understanding of this validator proposal is that essentially the DAO would be inheriting the contract for the workers, the developers who are already building out the chain. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we can't afford to keep them on, unfortunately. And or if we did keep them on, we would need them to work on other things.
Yeah, understood.
But so, yeah, it's like have the DAO basically, literally hire those developers.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like we would be onboarding new folks into this ecosystem. They're already familiar. They're already.
I mean, the DAO could say, no, we don't like this proposal. We want to hire some different people. Fine. Sure. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense.
It makes sense to keep the people. I mean, that's going to be the path of least resistance, obviously.
And at this point, the two guys we have working on this they're like really good. Is that was part of the problem? You know, we had some people here and there that, you know, weren't are the top developers, just like working on it here and there, and that's why it never got done, or there were more problems and whatever. And so eventually I was like, look, we got to be done with this. This needs to happen. We need like two top guys on it.
Yeah.
So Matt, I got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Can I hop in here, Dangles? Just to clarify, Matt, because I know anybody listening to this is probably, if they're not experienced, are going to have a question. Let's say it's 40,000 a month for a year, and you
That is
say it's
actually
going to
what
be
I plan to propose. So
right. And let's say it goes after 1 year, which you said is likely we'll want to keep at least one of the guys on. I mean, are you looking at another 40,000 like in perpetuity, or do you think it drops dramatically down after it's developed? Does that make sense? In other
Well, I
words,
don't
is
think
it
it
something that
necessarily doesn't do anything. I think it'll be up. So yeah, I think if it's just like, hey, keep the thing running, yeah, I think that can drop dramatically down, right? At some point, it gets released. After release, there's a whole bunch of bugs and issues and changes, and there's like things for a little while. My expectation is that within a year, it gets to a pretty stable state, right? So then it can be much cheaper for just like general maintenance and the little bug fixes and issues that come up. That may not be the case. It may still have a lot of problems and need a lot of work after a year. That's just my expectation right now. But also, it could be that the DAO wants to, maybe there's another crypto bull run and the DAO is doing really well, and they decide, hey, we want to add a whole bunch new features to this validator. You know what I mean? Who knows? And then could decide to spend more and have more people work on it. It'll be open source, also, so anyone will be able to work on it. I mean, you can have people work on it on a volunteer basis if they want to. But yeah, my expectation is that like this 40,000 a month is to get it running and stable and working. So it could just be let go at that point. Let
Cool.
go. Let go, not like forgotten about, but like let running without much, money or work spent on it.
Is this, Matt, in terms of timeline of kind of your intended release for these proposals to go public, are you intending to run this validator proposal first, get approval, and then go to Hive and say, hey, we've already approved the development for the SPS chain, which is going to be, a marketable asset for Hive, which could then, snowball into Hive's ability to attract new projects and that sort of thing? Is that kind of how you're foreseeing these proposals line up, or is it going to be?
I'm planning to put all three of them out at the same time.
Okay.
A bunch of people in the community want the Hive proposal out first because they want to get money from Hive before they're putting in money. So people want it all different ways. So I think it makes sense to go out, like I said earlier, and say like, hey, we want everyone to contribute to their piece of the project. I don't think the Hive people who aren't Splinterlands players will, I don't even know that they'll be really aware or care that much about our own internal proposals, and stuff like that. But I think it also looks good to the Hive DAO for if they do look and they do say like, hey, the SPS DAO is also, they're doing their part, right? Everybody's doing their part. No one's like trying to take from other people. Because if I'm a Hive DAO person, I'm like, hey, the SPS DAO has a couple million here. What the hell why are we giving our funds? Like, it's more important for them. So to me, it's like, hey, everyone has their part. So the SPS DAO needs to build out their token, right? It does benefit Hive, but not as directly as the Splinterlands team and
Probably the
project
best
in
way to
general.
put it that I've heard this whole time. That right there, everyone kind of the men making the optics of everyone kind of doing their part and working together as a result.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going for by putting them all out together.
That sounds good. And we're kind of cruising along here. We're talking. It's going. If I think we're good on that right now. You guys good with Hive for now? Before quick.
Yeah, let's switch it up, man.
I had one quick question, just because you mentioned a promo card, and this could be quick. This doesn't have to be a super deep dive here, but when you guys have asked for help, funding for promo cards in the past, it's typically been about $100,000 to make a card. Is that like, that seems insanely expensive? It might just be
that's not what it is. It doesn't, and I think I've mentioned this in the proposal in the past. It doesn't cost anywhere near that to make a card. It is, I think, a bit more than some people, think it is, because it's not just literally like design. We can make and design a card, but it's like doing the whole event and everything. But it's like our company needs funds. Like we got to pay our employees, we got to pay for our servers, we got to do all this stuff. So it's really like we typically sell a promo card. So if a promo card is going to bring in 200 million DEC, you know, I know that's less than $200,000, but let's just say $200,000 for this. Like if the DAO is the one selling that promo card and not us, that's what we're giving up. We're giving up $200,000 that we would have had to continue to fund our company. So the thinking for me was sort of like what we're doing with Rebellion, where it's like sort of 50-50 split. So I expect it might bring up like 200 million, bring in about 200 million DEC. So we asked the DAO to split it with us, right? And that's literally, and the same thing with Rebellion sale. That's just us giving up funds, like, you know, for no reason other than that. I think that's the best thing to do for the long-term success of this project, right? So it's like
it's basically like an investment type of thing. Hey, if you give us 200,000, hopefully you make 400,000.
That's exactly what, and that's what the upcoming proposal for the promo card sales literally says that. Like, and so it's the question of is the DAO the one taking the risk and earning the upside, or is the company, right? So if the company just does it ourselves, we spend whatever time and resources, we put this thing out. If it flops, that's on us. If it does really well, we get the benefit. I'm saying I'm going to give that to the DAO. It's worked out fantastically for Rebellion, right? The DAO's made a huge profit on that compared to what was spent. I think a similar thing will happen to the promo cards. And so I'm saying, yeah, but the DAO will take the risk if it does flop and get the benefit if it's successful.
I wanted to bring up pricing of promo cards because it seems in the past several that pricing has been a bit high for all of them in a bear market situation. It's almost like Zerial came out and it was like bull run pricing in a bear market. That raised it and prevented a lot of the community from participating, and obviously it didn't sell as well as it could have. And then the last ones were also legendary and a rare, and the rare actually cost more to max than the legendary did because of the pricing. I understand the pricing was symbolic with the halving and all of that stuff, but would you guys consider making some of these cards more accessible to the entire community? We definitely need to have some that are expensive. I understand that, and certain legendary promo cards should have a very high price and be exclusive, but I also feel there should be some commons and rares and other things that are priced more for more people to participate.
Well, that's why we did the legendary and the rare. So yes, it costs the same amount or more in this case to max out the rare, but if you just want to participate, is a much cheaper entry. So I don't know if it would make sense to have it to be like much cheaper to max out the card. I don't know if that would benefit anybody.
Well, I mean, when it's $300 to max out a rare, that's kind of up there, especially even compared to other cards in the Rebellion set or anything.
Yeah, so I think we want to make it similar, but also so it's.
And you sell less at the same time. If it's too expensive, you sell less. At that.
I don't know. There's pros and cons both ways. So the thing is, like you're saying, yeah. So if they're more expensive, you sell less. They're less expensive, you sell more. It might be the same amount of money at the end of the day, right? So the question is it better? Like down the road, that's something that people might look at. Like, hey, there's a lot fewer of these cards being sold. They're going to be much more rare, right? So that's. I don't know. I'm not sure it's better necessarily to have them be cheaper and more abundant.
Not all of them. That's where I think there's the balance. Have certain ones like the legendaries, and sometimes in the rotation you have a very expensive exclusive promo card, and then other times you have one that's priced more, literally, so everyone can participate and.
Yeah, well, I'll say we're not going to do the symbolic pricing, right? So we will price them more based on that stuff going forward. And the plan is to do, I think more like legendary and rare together. So there's like a cheaper and more accessible and a expensive. I haven't worked on the pricing yet for any of this stuff, but I hear you.
I,
and it won't be
I
the same as the last one.
I have a suggestion that I know you're probably going to say no to, but I thought I'd bring it up anyway. Um, in the deal, where you're going to make the promo cards, and hopefully the DAO, pays you an upfront sum of money, and then the proceeds go to the DAO. Would you consider on at least a test basis, maybe one of them, doing it where you sell the regular foil for the deck, and then price the gold foil, meaning that you don't get a chance to draw, but you price the gold foil in SPS, and that way the DAO gets both, and that would enable you to possibly price the regular foil cheaper, and of course make get the DAO more money, by selling the gold foil in SPS.
Yeah, I mean, we could. I just don't know why you think that leads to the DAO getting any more money.
Because we get the SPS at an extremely cheap rate. With SPS being down
Looking
under
at volume, not necessarily value,
and looking down the
but
road.
volume.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
saying do it for all of them. I'm just saying maybe experiment with one of them. That's all.
yeah, and
I
I'm
don't.
not. I also don't know if it's. So I'm not against the idea of doing SPS, but I also like is it better or worse if we take away the chance of getting a gold foil, and you just have to buy it directly. I mean, my
That's
gut
the
feel is
experiment
like,
right there.
yeah. So I don't know. So I'm open to all these things, and trying different things.
And I'm not asking you to commit on it. I just wanted to bring it up. That's all.
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying no. I just, I have some like there's definitely some things we gotta think about before we do that. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna think about those things, and it's gonna be the proposal is for 5 more promo card sales, so we can try to change things up and see how it goes.
And I'd also like to point out, I see almost the giveaways that have been involved, while appreciated, almost seems kind of like it creates the situation where people.
Jimmy, you mean the leaderboard? The leaderboard?
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
raffles and stuff, and how you get all these tickets for it. The last time we saw all these people, or certain whales, just cycling cards, just buying tons of them and then dumping them on the market. And I wanted to participate. I bought a max copy of each card. Part of that was like, I want to help the company and show my support and stuff. And then I'm just watching, and I bought early, to get the raffle things. And I'm watching people just buy and cycle and dump. And every day the price of the card was getting lower on the market. And I'm like, oh, I should have just waited. I don't want that to happen again. I don't, I want to be like, feel good about supporting directly.
Yeah, so that's the thing. The people who are buying up a lot of cards, in this case, if the proposal passes, that's more money going to the DAO, right? So the question is, do we want to, not encourage people to buy extra cards and then sell fewer of them? I don't know.
Well, I had a suggestion for the leaderboard, Yaba. We saw the leaderboard. I think the first time we saw the leaderboard for sales come into its current iteration was with the big DEC burn last summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then we saw the same tools kind of implemented with the halving event, and it was sort of the same progress bar in both, where we saw a lot of sales on the early days to take advantage of that big multiplier, and things tapered off. So my suggestion was, and I think I brought this up on the Crypto Eater episode, was the idea of introducing RNG to the multiplier. I don't know how much coding would be involved, but
I think you posted that as a comment also in the proposal, which I responded to it. I don't know if you saw my response.
Oh no, I hadn't seen the response yet.
Yeah, it was if remembering off the top of my head, it was a cool idea. I'm not sure that would actually be well received. in the sense that, like, I'm not sure if adding RNG is, people will like that or not, because you're like, yeah, it's like cool and fun, like you check every day. Okay, does that really benefit us or the DAO or anyone if people are checking every day? And then it's a situation of, if you don't know and like you see a relatively high multiplier one day and you go and buy a whole bunch of cards, and then another day later there's a higher multiplier, I feel like you'll kind of feel like crap. I wish I didn't
I don't
buy
know,
the
but
cards that day.
so my I mean, your sentiment is not lost on me, but I feel like as a potential big buyer of a promo card, I would be like, trying to DCA in with the multiplier stuff. So it kind of adds the
But why is that
gamify
better
element.
though? I don't
Um,
like who cares if people all buy at the beginning?
okay. Well, I mean
That
that's a great counter question. I don't know. Yeah, I was just trying to think of something that we're trying to encourage the ongoing engagement, and perhaps maybe that multiplier reaches above 10x one day towards the end of the cycle, sort of thing, and we see bigger sales. I don't know. It's
I
it's
just
just
feel
a
like
thought,
everyone who
like,
bought in before that, like, is going to be pissed off. I don't know. So I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just saying, like, I could see that backfiring in a
Well, I
big
almost
way.
felt the same way about the cards. Like I bought the promo cards from the site, and then I was like, damn it, I could have just waited and literally gotten gold foils for less than I paid for the regular foil.
Well, that's a little different, and that's like, I mean, that's the case with that. That's not like because there's randomness in the sale. So
No, but
that's
but
something
the
you can
most,
kind of anticipate going forward.
I
like,
I want to I want to apologize to everybody because I started off with the rambling nonsense that we're talking about. Like Matt
Well,
said, he's
there's
gonna.
no rambling nonsense, Dave. It's all
No, this
appreciated and
is good
encouraged.
because I had a thought from what you said, Jimmy, about that particular problem. And it's a similar problem we had with Chaos Legion, where we offered all these rewards for people who made big Chaos Legion purchases, which meant people bought all these Chaos Legion packs when they
and
didn't really
devalued the
want the
asset.
Chaos Legion
They wanted
packs.
the prizes,
And
right?
that is a problem. And I was like, we're not doing that again with Rebellion. But your point is right, is that we are doing that with the promo cards. And we shouldn't. If people should buy the promo card, because they want the promo card to play with. And there's going to be some speculation, right? So some people are going to buy the promo card, but if people are literally just buying the cards and they don't give a crap about them at all because they just want these other great rewards, that's a problem. So I'm wondering if actually we should split that up. We should do a promo card sale, or just the promo card, no leaderboard rewards, no anything, nothing. But then why don't we just have a separate thing with whatever the leaderboard prizes were, and you burn DEC to get whatever leaderboard prizes there are.
Honestly,
so we don't lose any.
I'd almost rather see the prizes that you've been giving away saved for when we get new players. Because right now it's just kind of dilute, the more plots going out, more titles going out, more these packs going out, almost dilutes, all these assets in the what we have.
Well, that's what we have to see. Like we also need, so the company needs funds, right? I mean,
right. And I
so
mean, ideally,
we can just say, hey, we're not doing any of that stuff, and then people are going to spend less money. And in this case, the DAO, it would be, we'll get less and not be as. So if the community would rather the DAO get less and put less of these things out, that's fine. In our case, in the previous promo card sales, we were like, hey, we want to incentivize people to spend more here because we need it.
No, that makes sense. So I'm thinking about more like, in an ideal situation, promo cards are, so rare, quote, desirable, that people buy them because they are speculating and they say, wow, buying these now and then being able to rent my extra copy or having, an edge in battle makes it worth spending the extra money and buying these. And the demand comes organically from that. Obviously, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen with a diminished player base, but that would be my ideal situation for people buying cards for the value of the cards themselves.
Yeah. So I mean, to be clear, the leaderboard rewards literally just encourage people to spend more than they would otherwise spend.
Right. While
Right.
with
And
with
it's
the
up.
incentives devaluing the asset itself, like we were just
Yeah.
discussing,
So
unfortunately.
yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount that people would spend to buy just the cards, right? And then if you add other stuff in there, it encourages more, right? That's so it doesn't, if the DAO is funding if the DAO is paying the company, then we don't care, right? It's whatever the DAO wants
Right.
to, it's whatever the community wants to do there. So if the community's like, hey, we don't want any leaderboard rewards, we're fine with whatever the cards bring in, then great. And the DAO's in a better position than we are to do that, right? The DAO might be able to say, hey, like we don't need a big profit on this. Like having a bunch more DEC doesn't do anything for us, but having higher value promo cards is more valuable. So
And I'd almost think right now, like again, things can be different in the near future, but right now the company needs the money more than the DAO does. I'd personally almost rather see you guys just say, we're selling these promo cards and getting some revenue from them.
well, so so yes and no. So one thing, it's a little bit weird, but I want to make sure, like, that when the company had a bunch of extra money, we wasted so much. And it's been good and bad, that now that we've been more tight on money, we've been really cutting the waste, and that's good. And I think, the more, any DEC in this case that goes to the company, that is going to be sold, right? The company doesn't directly sell it on the market, but the company, when people pay us in credits, or people buy things in credits, we pay out DEC. So that DEC goes out into the markets. So the more that goes to the company versus burned or to the DAO, the more difficult it's going to be for asset prices to go up, right? So my goal is actually for the company to take the minimum that it needs and not a DEC more, right? Every single DEC or DEC cent that we don't need to pay our bills, and with reducing our expenses as much as humanly possible, that should be burned or in the DAO and out of circulation. And then, worst case scenario, like if it really comes like that, the company is running out of money, we go to the DAO and say, hey, help us, right? So like putting it into the DAO is not saying it's like gone and not available. It's saying like the DAO's holding it, and if it's an emergency, we could ask for it. But my preference is actually not to take a cent more than we need.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Well, I really love the idea of, to Dave's point, kind of A/B testing. We got, assuming this proposal passes, we would have five chances to kind of roll out these promo cards in a different fashion with different incentives and perhaps price points and currency available to purchase. And yeah, I love the idea of mixing it up and trying to figure out what's the ideal situation for everybody.
The flip side that I just want to note is that my hope was that we just like kind of build out these 5 at once and then just release them at different times. So it's not like, oh, now we have to do more work and change this and do that, and make it as minimal work as possible. But I think there's a middle ground where like changing up currencies and things is not that big of a deal. So I think it makes sense to include in the proposal something like, hey, we'll try out a bunch of different mechanics, and
by the way,
within reason.
Since I started it, I would also like to say I think it should always be y'all's decision, meaning the team's decision on something like that. In other words, we can't possibly know, the community can't possibly know what kind of work it takes on your end. So I just want you to know that, like I threw out that suggestion, it literally is just a suggestion. I have no idea what it would take on your end. So
I like the suggestion though, because I also don't know what the best way to do a promo card sale is, right? So, it is good to try things. So I think we'll have to balance that. Like, what can we try without, making it a project?
Yeah. And I guess I want to end, and I know this isn't my show, but I got lucky. I wanted to thank Jangles for letting me be, here, or inviting me to be on the show. And I also wanted to say that, I know you said that you don't feel you want to take any credit for the changes that have been made, but I can tell you right now, there's been a lot of changes that have been made that people are not recognizing. I'll put it that way. So we'll take the word credit out, but there have been a lot of changes that are happening and have happened that are putting in place the things that are necessary to go to the next level. And I think it's going to be one of those situations where we're going to wake up one day and say, you know, how did all this happen? But it didn't happen all at one time. It happened over a period of time. And I just wanted to let you know that I see it, you know, whether everybody else can or not, I can't control, but I definitely
appreciate that. Yeah, we're
The-
trying to
the-
make it happen.
The 10 years, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. I have to say, when you first jumped on and the background that you have, it's for people who can't see, it's a freaking badass animation from looks like a chaos dragon just demolishing a town. There's been so much content created in the past couple of years by you guys. All these animations, and they're such a unique style. It's something that I've loved about this game as I've watched it develop too. This animation. It's not this realistic 3D thing that everything looks like. It's this really, really cool two-dimensional, not Disney-like, but Disney-like, but not Disney-like. You know, it's got a recognizable look to it. You look at that and you say that is Splinterlands artwork right there.
Well, Nate and the creative team definitely get the credit for that one.
Yeah, but it's just there's so much of it. Every time I turn around, there's more. Hell, I would love to see those as backgrounds. I want that on my battle screen. I'd buy that.
Yeah, it's part of the cosmetics that we're, you know, planning to do.
Nice. How's that coming along? Like, is that a super long-term process? I mean, obviously, the beginning of this is your funnel. The new player funnel is
Yeah, so it's not the top priority, but it is. So once we get real progress on that onboarding funnel, then that's one of the like first things that will kind of be like a next step.
Beautiful.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get you out of here, Yaba. We're here because of you, dude. I can't echo what Dave shared enough. And you know, I was personally reinvigorated and re-encouraged when you took over the helm. And gosh, I guess, can you believe it was almost a year ago at this point?
Almost a year.
Just kind of it's just kind of flashed by in a blink of an eye, and it's been a busy freaking 10 months, and we got another busy freaking 10 months ahead of us. And you know, we're all here to support and got your back for, you know, however long this ride can take us, and hopefully it's upwards and onwards, man. So again, thank you. Jimmy and Dave, thanks for hopping on. And go ahead, Matt. You have the last word, dude.
Just, you know, I like doing these things. I like being able to talk about this stuff in these type of formats. So, you know, I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Wonderful. We'll make it happen. All right, everybody. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next week back with I think Hep will be back in his usual co-hosting spot. And yeah, we've had Jimmy fill in his stead for the last couple of weeks, and hopefully it's not too long before we get him back on. And thanks again to Dave for taking up the offer to bring the three amigos here on this show. So for everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.